It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Breakfast. And right across the weekend, we are talking property news as heard on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts and Amazon. Yes, I hope your weekend is going well. It is the 15th day for today, 15th of September, that is. And you might have heard the story about a first-time homebuyer from the ABC who was thrilled in securing a two-bedroom apartment in Sydney. However, his excitement turned to devastation when he lost his $280,000 of life savings. And this is how smart these scammers are getting. They impersonated his law firm, tricking him into transferring the money to a fraudulent account. Though he eventually bought the property, years were added on to his mortgage, and the buyer blames the banks, law firm, and current legislation for lacking adequate safeguards. In response to cases like this, the Albanese government introduced new laws to hold banks, phone providers, and tech companies accountable for preventing and addressing scams, which, if you look at just last year, cost Australians $2.7 billion. Yeah, it's a lot of money that scammers are taking money from our bank accounts. Hey, it's been another busy 7 days. We will reflect back in just a moment and take a look at some of those interviews next.
Ready to step up your property knowledge? Access powerful insights with us.
Oh, exactly right. Victoria is the fastest growing state at the moment. Numerically, it added just in the last 12 months, almost 190,000 additional people, much of that through migration, a little bit through natural increase, and a little bit through the interstate flow of things as well, people coming and going across the state, but particularly the regions are getting that interstate and intrastate population growth. So the state increased its population by 2.8% in a single year. Now, keep in mind that it's added more people than any other state, and yet a state like New South Wales is 20% larger. So that just highlights how solid the growth is, that it's adding more people than even the largest state of New South Wales. So that growth is expected to continue, as is the growth across Australia, and that demand is, with population increase, is not being met by supply of housing, and so we are seeing this ongoing upward pressure on house prices.
And if you look at Australia, is Australia a little bit different to other countries in terms of just how long people are prepared to hold on to their properties? I mean, this is particularly noticeable in these good suburbs where the equity growth people have has been borne out in these numbers that you and I are talking about this morning, that growth factor.
Yeah, that's right. We do tend to buy and hold, particularly in these areas where people look to buy a home, raise the children there, perhaps have an empty nest period there for a while before they finally sell. Those that have paid off their mortgage in Australia stay about 14 years. And if it's a detached home, the average is a little longer. So yes, we do tend to live in these places for a fair while, and that's just the average. So some of these places haven't been on the market for 2 or 3 decades. They also are places with larger land size, larger house blocks, because they are a little older. And so that, amidst, again, the population growth, does give the opportunity for people coming in to think about subdivision or a secondary dwelling, and that's driving the price up as well compared to new house and land packages. So, they've got a lot going for them, and the fact that, they're being held for a while means that house price increase has been significant. That's why you're getting the doubling or the trebling for these houses in these suburbs.
Yeah, hold on as long as you can is the motto. And just on that point, the millennials, you see them talking about buying their forever homes. I think when I was at a similar age, there was no way that I was buying a property saying this is my forever home. It was my stepping stone. But I just wonder how much of a factor the mum and dad bank is playing here, because these homes, some of them are quite substantial, which means that, for the normal person that doesn't have that sort of equity being handed to them from their parents, they might be on their third or fourth property, but the millennials coming from that wealth factor, boom, straight into a forever home.
Well, we've called it the property ladder for a reason. Normally, people started the Aussie dream at the bottom rung and worked their way up over time. Maybe it was a unit in a place a little bit away from their ideal suburb, but hey, that's where they started, the one bedders, the two bedders, and moved on up through the property cycle over time. But yes, you are getting a generation that has a bit more of a focus on lifestyle, that probably aren't wanting to compromise as much. In fact, we found in our research that some of them expect to start their economic life in the manner in which they've seen their parents finish their economic life, in that nice house in the leafy suburb. And the only way that can, of course, occur in most circumstances is if the bank of mum and dad, or even the property of mum and dad, is somehow used to support that transition. So there's a bit of that takes place. But look, for most people, the Aussie dream still is attained by just buying what they can afford, and that is not normally a forever place. Some indeed aren't even wanting to live where they can afford to buy, so they're buying what they can, using that as an investment property, renting where they want to live. We call them the rentvestors, and there's a lot more of those, renting for lifestyle reasons, but investing for that earnings reason, and they're making a good fist of it.
Every week, unravel the real estate market to empower your real estate knowledge.
A lot of people don't put their hands up until we reach that on the market, that voice from the auctioneer. Property is now on the market. It is now selling. So many people just don't want to engage with any form of bidding until it reaches on the market status. Is that in your experience, because I know that you're an auctioneer, is that a good strategy? What do you think?
Look, from a purchasing perspective, if I'm offering advice to people looking to buy, the objective for any auction would be to ideally shut down that auction process as quickly as possible, because the more time that people bid, or the more times that they choose to bid, the more confidence that they create for themselves. And all of a sudden, bidding isn't necessarily about how much money I'm parting with, it's just the concept of bidding. And so the quicker you can actually shut that auction process down, which means bidding with more enthusiasm and with more aggression toward the top end of your budget, the likelihood is you're actually going to start to slow down your competition. Whereas I've seen auctions where people have bid $1,000 bid increments, and that's happened 100 times, and you've got $100,000 worth of price increase. All of a sudden, everybody's confidence to participate increases. The purpose of a reserve for an auction is the limit at which the vendor sets the property is going to be sold. Auctioneers don't need to announce by legislation the property is on the market. So the objective is, if you want to buy that home, you should be able to go there and be bidding with confidence, with the objective of winding that auction process up as quickly as you can to remove the confidence from your competition. And the advantage of that auction process is it's transparent. You can see exactly who your competition are, who you're competing with, and the goal should be trying to get that squared away as quickly as possible so that you're not encouraging more participation from other potential purchasers.
And I think another way of looking at it too is if you drop 50K down, I mean you're making a massive statement, but it's not like you drop 50 on it or 25, suddenly you win the property. I think a lot of people go, oh, I actually paid too much for it. But all you're doing is you're saving those increments, by $5,000, $2,000, whatever it is, up and up and up and up and up. And soon $25,000, $50,000 goes by. But the illusion is that, it's over. It's too expensive for me.
Exactly. I mean, a lot of people don't take the psychology and the emotion involved in buying a home as seriously as they do, particularly when we're talking about sort of, the observations surrounding the marketplace and everything's data driven. But purchasing a home is a very emotional experience, particularly for owner occupiers, but even investors. The concept of buying a property is highly emotional. You're 100% correct. That objective of that first initial bid being $25,000 or $50,000 above, your competitor, it may feel daunting, but to your point, sidelining the emotional journey for the rest of those potential purchases possibly saves you additional money. Because as I said before, with that previous example, I've seen auctions increase by $100,000 with $1,000 bids. Using that same case study, if one of those purchases had have increased their initial bid by $50,000, the likelihood is their competition probably wouldn't have wanted to participate or continue, because the gap between where they are and where they need to be, that's a $50,000 consideration as opposed to just a $1,000 bid. There's a lot of fundamentals to consider, but taking into account the emotion attached and the psychology surrounding that for the people that you're competing with is an important factor when you're bidding an auction.
We are more than just a real estate podcast. Follow each week all of the main talking points and know your property.
Black Friday the 13th. I hope you're not too superstitious.
Hi, Craig. Thank you for having me. No, I'm actually not superstitious at all. I feel we make every day count and make it our own. I don't let any outside influences or superstitions impact how I go about my day. But it can be for some, so I totally understand.
Yeah, it's just all in the mind. I remember as a school kid having my hand read from a school teacher. I was a bit of a rebel at school, and he looked at my hand and he said, "Oh, looks like you do pretty well in life, but..." And I said, "What's the but? What's the but?" And he said, "Looks like you die at a fairly young age of 35. Imagine telling that to a 14-year-old, because my reaction was, wow, 35, that's brilliant, that's old.
Oh my goodness, well, you wouldn't be able to get away with doing that these days, but certainly that would have been quite terrifying.
But here's the rub with this story. I was out on my jet ski, aged 35. It was a little bit windy. The wind got up and I fell off the jet ski. The jet ski zoomed off, but it was like 200 meters and there were these massive swells. And what ran through my head was that school teacher telling me 35. I thought, this is the day.
Oh, no. Oh, dear, that would have been terrifying for you. But you made it through, Craig.
Yeah.
And dare I ask how old you are now?
A little bit older than 35. Yeah, very funny, but very scary at the time. So it just goes to show how somebody can get into your ear. Now, you're going to get into our ear, talking of that, about Brighton. Very, very popular, of course. It was once known as Dendy's Special Survey after Henry Dendy. What was that about? He owned quite a lot of property around the area.
He did indeed, and we actually have quite a prominent street named after him, obviously Dendy Street, and it really is the demarcation between Middle Brighton and South Brighton. It leads basically right down from Nepean Highway down to the beach. So Henry Dendy is very well known, and he owned a lot of land. I think we were talking about it before, around about, did we say 500 or 5,000?
Yeah, 5,000 acres.
Close to the beach it was, so it would have been worth a lot back then.
And for those unit prices, 1,235,000. Gee, that unit price, Sarah, that's right up there, isn't it, in terms of unit prices across Australia in exclusive areas?
It certainly is, and we're seeing demand for these units actually increase because I guess buyers are moving around into different price categories. So once upon a time it was the first home buyer, but we're now seeing young families looking at units just due to affordability. So once upon a time they were looking perhaps at a standalone house, they're now looking at units as a starter home. It is pushing the first home buyers out to different suburbs and families into units.
And what's been happening with the buyer behaviour in your market? If you have a look maybe across the last 5 to 6 months, what's been happening in that space?
Buyers are due to the economic conditions, and especially in Brighton, we're seeing a lot of cautiousness enter the market. Due to the fact that prices aren't rising, there's a lack of urgency in the market. If a buyer misses out on a property, they're not so concerned. They will wait for the next one to come onto the market. So urgency is lacking. Buyers have time to make decisions. Buyers are far more discerning.
Yeah, so our research team has been tracking a surge in listings across some of the biggest capitals, so Sydney and Melbourne in particular, and also Canberra. According to SQM research, Sydney's listings popped up nearly 15% in August, and Melbourne was up about 12%. The increase in listings has created more opportunities for buyers, which is good. It's easing competition, and in some cases like Melbourne, it's actually starting to soften prices. So they're all good things if you're a buyer, and may represent an opportunity in somewhere like Victoria in due course. Even in Perth, we've been chronically undersupplied for a long time, as you know, but we did see an 11% bump in listings in the last 4 weeks. So that's the first sort of sign of positivity we've seen in that particular indicator for a while. It's just 4 weeks and it remains to be seen, excuse me, whether it's a trend or an anomaly, similar to what we've seen in our rental market, where we saw stock levels spike up a little bit about 6 months ago, and that plateaued our rental median price. But then they've, in the same 4 weeks where listings for sale went up, listings for rent came down by about the same percentage figure. So it is bouncing around a little bit, and I don't think it is a trend, and I don't think we're going to see a lot more stock coming to market.
Okay, and of course people are always a little bit curious, a little bit cautious when it comes to an increase in listings and just how that might impact on home buyers and investors alike in Perth.
The impact will be minimal because I think from what I can see, and I don't have any data to support this, but from what I can see, the type of listings where we've seen an increase reflects what we expected to happen in the market at this stage, where we've seen a transitioning from excessive heat in that bottom quartile of pricing moving up through the market. If you have a budget of 500,000 or 600,000 in Perth, I think the value proposition is dissipating there, but the demand from upgraders in terms of selling their homes and upgrading now that they see some stability in interest rates, that's where I'm seeing more listings in that sort of 900 up to about 2 million sort of price point. But the increase in listings in Perth, whilst the percentages, it's very similar to Sydney and Melbourne as a quantum, we're talking very different numbers. For us, it's only a few hundred extra properties, so it's not really something we've felt on the ground here as a buyer's agency team.
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.